Good morning, everyone. It's Mr. E here, and I'm back with a video that I released a while ago, but this is a redone version of that video. In that previous video, which is about 3 or 4 months old, I tackled the task of ranking all abilities, keystones, blitzes, and this one I'm going to add in auras to that list. I'm redoing it because I think my opinions on these has changed a lot. I say I think because I did not go and rewatch the video. I didn't want to pollute my current opinions with how I felt about stuff back then, because I had about 800 hours less of experience in the game, and I just wasn't at the place where I am today, and certainly the meta behind these abilities has evolved as well. I also want to sort of address, before we get started, what these tiers represent. So A tier is sort of our baseline for like really good abilities. You should not be shying about using these in any of your builds. S tier is reserved for abilities that have the capability to sort of turn the game on its head, right? These are going to make the game like turn around a terrible situation and make it winnable. If you have one of these on your team or multiple of them on the team, they're just going to like hard carry you a lot of times. There's only a couple of S tier abilities. I'm really going to be stingy about which ones I put into S. But those are for ones that sort of are game defining, and you hope and you pray when you see one of these classes on your team that has these available to them that they're picking it and they're bringing it into the game. B is like super standard. It's usable, but it's nothing special. C starts to get into the questionable territory of like, I don't know, should you really be like bringing this into the match? And D is just straight up like, please don't bring this. Like, there is so much better stuff. Usually like C and D are really poorly positioned on the tree, or just offer benefits that are completely outweighed by their counterparts. So with that being said, let's go ahead and place our first thing on the tier list. We're going to go down here and grab subbing to Mr. E. That is definitely going to go into the S tier. It's such a great node. It offers like between 20 and 25% more satisfaction with your life, no matter what build you put it in. So I have to, in all good conscience, recommend that every build chooses to sub to Mr. E. That's just going to be a really strong baseline. So all jokes aside, let's go ahead and start with abilities. And first and foremost, we have one of the Zealots, Bread and Butter, Fury of the Faithful. Now this ability is the charge ability. You probably know it as that. And it is a really strong ability. Let's go over what it gives you. When you use this ability, you become immune to ranged attacks, and I think you're immune to all damage during the charge. It's really hard to get hit by any melee attacks during the charge because you're moving at like 13 meters per second. But you'll zip to whatever enemy you have highlighted with this ability, or just to a predetermined location that's not that far away from you. You'll also replenish 50% of your toughness instantly, and you gain a 20% attack speed buff for the next 10 seconds. And your first attack after you use this charge is a super crit. And what I mean by that is this crit has 100% rending. So when you hit crushers and things with whatever weapon you're using after you charge, you act as if they have no armor at all. They're just pure health. This is a really solid ability. The only thing that holds it back is it's very solo oriented, right? It's super strong in like solo builds, or when you are like solo carrying. But for team play, it doesn't offer anything to the team, and it is very good at like clutch situations, but it isn't the be all end all. Some of these other abilities in a clutch situation, they just instantly solve the clutch situation. You can rescue your allies or whatever you need to do, just because these abilities are so overpowered. And it is just not as overpowered as one of the ones we'll be putting in S a little bit later on. So I'm going to give it an A tier. It is certainly a very high A tier. Now, a little bit more in the mid A tier is Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude. This might come as a surprise because Chorus is, it's golden toughness. It's just like Shout, right? And we all know that Shout's going in S tier. We'll get there in a little bit. But Chorus has this really big downside, which is that if you're playing with this ability, when you use this ability, you stand around and you do nothing for 7 seconds. And 7 seconds is a lot of time, especially a lot of time when you're playing Zealot, one of the most dangerous classes, who could really be using that 7 seconds. Imagine the difference between this ability and Veteran Shout. Veteran Shout staggers and knocks enemies down more, and he gets to do whatever he wants during the, right after he casts. It barely interrupts his animations at all. This completely stops everything you're doing. You can't attack, you can't res, you can't interact with stuff. If you could do some of those things, if you could pick up allies, if you could carry an objective, man, this ability would be really, really solid, having the ability to like buffer stuff back. But as it stands, it requires a lot of coordination to use effectively, because you basically need to like kind of just stack yourself right on top of your allies for them to get the benefit and be able to use the stagger and stuff to get stuff done. It also has this downside, which is the buff of the golden shields only lasts for 10 seconds out of its 60-second cooldown. Now, Zealot can reduce their cooldown like crazy, but that 10-second golden shields is a really short amount of time, which means you really can't use this ability to like pre-buff for a room for a dangerous encounter like you can with Veteran Shout, which lasts 15 seconds. So if they erase that, it would also really help the ability. But I think it's solid at A tier. It's a good ability. It's just not going to solo carry. However, speaking of solo carry, we have Shroudfield. Shroudfield, S for Shroudfield. That was the secret meaning of S tier all along. Shroudfield is just incredibly busted. It just breaks the game so much so that sometimes it feels unfun to use it in a little bit of a way. This ability, obviously, it makes you go stealth, and enemies are very quick to just completely forget everything about your existence. Like, you can have a crusher about to drop a 2-ton overhead on you. You press the stealth button, he'll put it away and he'll just turn around and walk the other direction. So this thing is just, I mean, if you wanted to pretend like there was no enemies in the whole map, this is the ability for you. And it also has amazing augments in the form of, you could either go Perfectionist, which just dunks on bosses. You keep the 3-second stealth, or you can go to a 5-second stealth, and you get a ton of utility out of it. You can do so much in 5 seconds. That is a lot of distance covered, especially because it gives you movement speed while you're in it. Also, this ability gives you a super juiced crit when you come out, just like, it's not just like Fury of the Faithful, but this one has extra backstab and finesse damage, which is insane. This thing just instantly blats bosses for like half their health if you're using Perfectionist, and even if you're not, you're still doing nuts damage. Having it also be a guaranteed crit works really well in synergy with the Zealot's abilities, because he has a ton of abilities that are like Invocation of Death especially, that are activated by getting crits. And you can guarantee a backstab kill coming out of it, which means that Pious Cutthroat, the Zealot's ability to lower his cooldown by 20% when you get a backstab kill, just automatically lowers your cooldown by even more. All that, to top it off, you have a 30-second cooldown. This cooldown is so stupid short. It has a 1/6 uptime because the cooldown is going while you are in stealth, which is bonkers to me. So you have 1/6 uptime without any of that other stuff, meaning you spend 1/6 of the mission just completely intangible to enemies. Really, like, this is just, you can solve any game situation with this. You can rescue allies, you can move the objective. You can just solo games are really easy with this ability, because enemies just literally cannot keep up with you. You can just stealth and run away if you really need to. S tier ability for sure. All right, moving on to the Ogren. The Ogren has 3 lovely abilities here, and this might be a bit of a controversial pick for me, but I am going to put Unstoppable, Indomitable? What's this called? Why do I not know? The Ogren Charge is S tier for me. The Ogren is just a really Indomitable. I knew it was that. Deep down. The Ogren is just really fun to play. He may not be the best class, but this ability has such huge potential to just completely flip a situation, and I'm ranking it an S tier. It might only be an A tier ability, but I am ranking it an S tier because this thing hits those fucking endorphin, like, you get the biggest endorphin rush ever. If you see a big fat group of enemies and you have this ability off cooldown, which is often because it's every 30 seconds, you just like, oh, you get the tingles. You're like, oh my God, this is going to be so good. And you run them all the fuck over, and everybody, including crushers, etc., are laid out on the ground, and you come back over top of them because this thing now has trample, which is an additional 2% base damage for 8 seconds for every enemy you hit, up to 25. So if you run over 25 enemies, you turn around and you have all of your damage multiplied by 1.5, which is huge. And so you just beat everything that's on the ground to death super quick. Amazing ability. It feels awesome, and it can really turn around bad situations. I think this is probably like my favorite ability out of the baseline abilities that the game launched with. This one was awesome, and it still is really, really awesome. It's super strong, and it's always nice to see an ogre that's using this and playing very aggressively and efficiently, because they can just completely rout enemy lines, no problem with this ability. I love it. Another ability I really love, which is the Ogren Taunt. I'm going to put this one in A tier, though, instead of S tier. Again, the Taunt is really, really strong. It breaks enemies' AI, means they have to come to you and attack you. It also offers a base damage, or like a damage multiplier to the enemies, which is always very valuable because it makes enemies take more damage, which is an additional multiplier to the additional, the increased damage that we have as players. When there's abilities that say increases your damage, they're not as impactful as increasing the damage enemies take. And so this thing can increase that damage that enemies take when they're taunted, if you have the valuable distraction node. And it has a super huge radius when you grab big lungs, which you pretty much will, guaranteed. Which makes that all these enemies come over, drop everything they're doing, and come over to you. The only downside of this ability is that it does require some sort of team coordination. Like, the Ogren can make use out of it. Getting that all the enemies to come to him means his shield slams or whatever weapon he's using are finding a lot more targets to actually hit. You don't have to run around and find them all. And he does make advantage of, or make use of, the increased damage that the enemies are going to take, but it's really used best in coordination with a team that can call for you to use it during really sketchy times. But it's a good situation solver, just like Indomitable. It just does sort of the inverse of what other abilities do, where other abilities knock enemies down. This one pulls them all towards you. It also has an additional fun couple of effects. Enemies that are prone to being shoved, like dogs and bursters when they're in their jumping animations, those can be shoved backwards by activating this ability. So you can use it sort of like a veteran shout to keep those enemies away from you without having to shove them in a pinch. Then we've got the Ogren's, what is this called? Point Blank Barrage, right? This ability, I put this a lot lower, I think, in my last tier list, if I'm remembering correctly, but I'm going to give it B tier. The reason why is because I've been having a lot of fun with this ability, using it with single shot weapons like the Kickback and the Rumbler. I actually don't think it's that bad. The secret is you do not want to go whole hog on this thing and go down into Burst Limit or Override, this ability down here, or this Keystone down here. That is a bait. Burst Limit or Override, we'll get to it. It isn't very good. So stay away from that, but you can choose this and then stay with one of the two better sort of keystones for the build. I think it's a good ability. It's definitely not as good as the other two Ogren abilities. They offer way more impactful things for the team. They have way shorter cooldowns. Well, I mean, at least Indomitable does. But yeah, these are way more impactful. But this one is just really fun, and it can open up some avenues for certain weapons on Ogren to be extremely powerful and get a lot of damage done. It's just that, right now, Ogren ranged really isn't in the meta, so to speak. There's one way to play Ogren, and that's hitting things really, really hard with heavy attacks. And it's just unfortunate. But so I'll give it B tier. I think it's fine. Okay. Okay, here we are at S tier again. It's the Veteran Shout. Veteran Shout is just an absolutely nuts ability, and I'll take a second here to explain why. I didn't really stop to talk too much about gold toughness when I talked about Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude, but Voice of Command let's list off the things it does. First and foremost, it replenishes your toughness to full, no matter if you have 1 or 0 or 50, and whatever your maximum cap is, your toughness goes to full. And we're stacking toughness in the current meta, and we always have on veteran. So this means that you get a ton of value out of this if you use it right before your toughness is about to be broken. And it staggers all enemies within 9 meters. This is a big stagger. This is a knockdown bulwarks and crushers stagger, right? This is this lays pretty much all enemies out on the floor for 5 seconds. Trappers, bombers or bursters or dogs that are jumping at you, all of them get thrown backwards bodily, and then you can just do whatever you want. So your hands are completely free because this is an instant cast ability. It does not interrupt any other animations. You can be firing, cast shout, and you do not interrupt your stream of fire. And then we have 2 ability modifiers. Only in death does duty end. The one that reses your allies is garbage. Never take that. But duty and honor is the most broken thing in the game, because as if this ability didn't already sound good enough, duty and honor makes it provide ourself and our allies that 50% gold toughness for 15 seconds. And gold toughness is so incredibly broken in this game. If you have any gold toughness, what it does is gives you shield gating, gives you one-shot protection. So if you have, say 100 toughness, and you take a crusher overhead, you're going to die. It's going to break your toughness, and the overkill from that crusher overhead is going to bleed into your health and kill you. If you have 100 toughness and 1 gold toughness, the crusher overhead now will hit you and break all of your toughness, but it will not affect your health at all. And the same is true for burster attacks and sniper shots. So all of those one-shot abilities that normally have enough damage to break your toughness and damage your health directly, they no longer do anything but break your toughness. At the same time, this ability gives you that gold toughness, that 50 extra toughness. And what that means is that is not just a temporary 50 toughness. It's for 15 seconds, but you can regenerate up to that plus 50 toughness. So if your gold shields get broken and there's another, veteran on the team or whatever who can shout and bring your toughness back up, you can go back to having gold shields before the duration ends. You can get chipped down and go into having blue toughness and be vulnerable to melee attacks. And then, if you're an Ogren or somebody like that who can regenerate 25 or 30% of their toughness every swing, you can pop back into gold toughness like with every attack. So it is super nuts. And all of that in combination with the fact that this is a 30-second cooldown ability. Which is insane to me, because the veteran also has access to tactical awareness, which is a node that gives you 6 seconds of cooldown reduction on specialist kill, which means that you only have to kill probably 3 specialists, and you got this thing up at higher difficulties, like we're talking about in the example for this guide. That's happening all the time. We're a veteran. We have a ranged weapon. We're picking these things off left and right. So we can keep this toughness up. It is not hard to get full gold toughness uptime every 15 seconds, especially if you run cooldown reduction curios or you have a psych or a psychonetics aura on the team. So just an amazing ability. This is what I would say defines the S tier. When you are playing at higher levels of gameplay, let's go ahead and put it in its appropriate space. When you're playing at higher levels of gameplay, you will always see shout veterans, because you can carry a team with this. If your team is bad and struggling, just shout for them, and you'll solve pretty much every situation. All right, then we've got Infiltrate. Infiltrate is the stealth ability for the veteran. I'm gonna give it B tier. B tier because it does have a lot of very useful augments to it, such as reducing your threat or increasing your damage or reducing your damage taken or whatever that last one is. These augments, you can actually take all of them. Oh, the last one is the double charge, which we'll talk about in a second. But all of these are actually kind of useful in their own different ways. My problem with this ability is, one, it's on veteran, so it shares opportunity cost with taking the actual good ability in terms of voice of command. And there's really nothing in the current design of voice of command and Infiltrate that that Voice of Command can do that Infiltrate can't. And I think I realized this most when I was trying to make a build for one of my members who wanted an Infiltrate build. And I made the build, and then I reflected on it and said, you know, I could literally spend the same points and have this be a shout build instead, and it would be twice as good. Because if you think about a situation in which you need to use Infiltrate, you need to get past a group of enemies who is guarding your ally who's been killed and is captured. You need to release them. With Infiltrate, you can walk up and you can release the person because you're invisible. They're not going to attack you at all. With Shout, you can walk up to the group of enemies and shout and knock them all to the ground, and you'll have enough time to get the person up. Plus, you'll have gold toughness after the enemies get up, and your person who's getting out of the bonds will have gold toughness, and all the enemies will be staggered. So it just really doesn't stack up to the opportunity cost of taking Shout in the current meta. So unfortunately I have to rank it lower for that. I think it's a cool ability. My one big downside with it is, we've got Shroud Field, which you might be thinking, oh, Shroud Field, it's another stealth ability. Stealth is really good. It's an S. Why is Infiltrate not higher? Well, Infiltrate has a 45-second cooldown, and it does not have access to the same cooldown reduction abilities that the Zealot has. The Zealot has like two different Invocation of Death and Pious Cutthroat that can both reduce your cooldown like crazy. The Veteran only has access to the 6 seconds on Specialist Kill or Tactical Awareness. So it's harder to reduce that cooldown for Veteran, and a 45-second cooldown is 50% greater than a 30-second cooldown, right? Even though the stealth is 8 seconds, it's just, a lot of times that 8 seconds is not fully usable. I would so much rather have a 20-second cooldown stealth that has a 2-second duration than have a 8-second stealth that has an 80-second duration, right? If that makes any sense. Just having a stealth reset at all means that enemies immediately drop aggro on you. They go and aggro on someone else, and then you can re-engage and hit them in the back. If they set a shorter cooldown, it'd be really big. And then I see a lot of people touting the awesomeness of the 2 charges thing. I just think that's super overkill. Like, I can count on one hand the amount of times I needed to use 2 charges of Infiltrate back to back to get something done. And it raises the cooldown to 1 minute each. And you do not start the game with both charges. You start the game with 1 charge. So if in your first encounter in the game, which is usually about 40 seconds of the game, you use a charge, you're kind of playing from behind. I think at least with that node, you should get both charges to start the mission. It feels kind of mean-spirited that you don't for some reason. Anyway, moving on. We've got Psyker Shield. Now, Psyker Shield has 2 distinct ways it can be used. It's got the bubble and it's got the wall. I don't really see many people using the wall at all. I don't really understand why you would. Yeah, it blocks like chargers and stuff like that, but we're basically talking about the bubble here. Now, the bubble is really, really good. It creates a constant regeneration effect for your toughness that is not interrupted by damage or anything, so you can get hit and your toughness is regenerating the whole time. It's a nice benefit for the whole team. It offers some toughness DR if it expires while you're in it, which really isn't generally happening that often. And the Psyker can have this up with a crazy frequency thanks to having cooldown reduction in their auras and having cooldown reduction from Psychonetic's aura, which is strangely not an aura ability. I am going to give this ability I'm going to give it B tier. I think B tier. The thing about this ability is you have to invest an extra 2 points to get this thing to be what it needs to be in terms of the dome that regenerates your shield. And it is sort of starting to fall behind as people are figuring out the other really, really powerful stuff that Psyker can do with their abilities. It's starting to fall behind. Yeah, it's really, really useful to your team, but we're playing, in this instance, we're playing quick play Auric Damnation. We cannot always rely on our team, and we can't spend our whole life living in a bubble. There are so many enemies right now that will make your bubble an unlivable space. You'll get a flame grenade or a gas grenade chucked into there. A burster will come and jump in on you. Bubbles, especially as you advance into higher levels of play, they become less and less safe spaces. Like, they're good to make an engagement and push into a room, but they're not nearly as they're not like crazy overpowered or anything. It's just a really, really nice ability to regenerate some toughness. So it's perfectly usable, especially if you're playing like a more support focused Psyker build. But it's going to be outshined by these other two we're about to get into. We've got Scryer's Gaze. Scryer's Gaze is, it's just a big stack of buff stats, right? It makes you just like go Super Saiyan, basically. It gives you 10% damage, 20% crit chance, and suppression immunity, and you gain peril while you're in it. For every second that you're in it, you gain 1% damage, which is very nice. We always like damage, and that effect continues even after you leave Scryer's Gaze for 10 seconds. Now, this wasn't as good as I think it is right now before this latest Psyker rework, where they added the node Warp Unbound. Scryer's Gaze now also prevents overloading from perils of warp during its lingering effect. So what you'll do is you'll get a mod, or you'll have a timer on your screen for when you activate this ability, and as soon as you hit 100% peril, where you normally would have exploded using old Scryer's Gaze, where it would have stopped, you can keep casting with this, which means that you can Scryer's Gaze with staves now, whereas before you could pretty much only use it with guns. I think it's still better with guns, but you can Scryer's Gaze with like the left click on Surge Staff, and it actually does an absurd amount of damage. Just a really, really solid ability, and it's a really high skill ability. You clap really, really hard, and it goes perfectly with one of the Keystones, which we'll get to in a second. I don't think it is like be all end all impactful. It's not gonna like completely solve the game like some of the stuff up here is. You can still get completely overwhelmed by enemies, right? This ability doesn't insta-kill bosses, it just kills them pretty fast. This ability doesn't allow you to, guaranteed get a res on your allies. You still gotta kill stuff like super, super hard, and this will let you do it better. But it's just not, it's not like that game changing. It makes you a fucking crazy maniacal murderer on the Psyker for sure. You'll probably top frag if you're running this ability and you can aim it all, but I just don't think it's not S tier powerful, because these abilities, maybe Indomitable isn't as good as these other two. It definitely isn't, but it just gets for fun points. But these two abilities right here are just super broken. Then we've got Venting Shriek. I'm going to put Venting Shriek into A tier for the simple fact that it has Creeping Flames. So Creeping Flames gives you stacks of Soul Blaze based on your current peril level when you vent. A skilled Psyker is not venting unless they are basically at 100. This thing allows you to just cast all day, because anytime that you are close to in danger of exploding from peril, and even after you put yourself over the threshold, you have like a 2 or 3 second window when you start clutching your little temples like your head's about to pop, to vent. And those stacks of Soul Blaze, the maximum stacks from Venting Shriek's Creeping Flames is 6 stacks, and that happens to be exactly enough to kill trash enemies. So the most effective use of this is just to cast, and then Venting Shriek anytime you see a big, large group of trash enemies, and they will all wither away and die. They will die like to the point of damage, basically. Like the last tick of that fire will kill them. So very nice. I'm certain that whoever designed that realized that was the truth about the ability. And this also has super great synergy with one of the nice Keystones later on, Warp Siphon, which can give you a chance to gain warp charges from having these enemies in Soul Blaze. So this is a great way to perpetuate and spread Soul Blaze on enemies, since the other options for spreading Soul Blaze up higher in the tree aren't all that great, and you would have to sacrifice a blessing to get Soul Blaze on your weapons. I think the most impactful build to use this ability on is probably with the Purgata staff, or is that what it's still called? The Flame staff for the Psyker, because that stacks Soul Blaze, and we can use Venting Shriek to stack Soul Blaze even faster. Just a really great ability, and A tier for sure. You're going to put out a huge amount of damage with these two abilities, but I don't think they're quite as game changing, situation solving as these two up here. They do require a bit of finesse and or like a front line to use effectively. And then we've got our last ability, which is the lovely Executioner's Stance. C tier. I think this is unfortunately the worst ability in the game right now. And here's why. This ability, all it gives us is 25% range damage, 25% range weak spot damage, and a reduction in spread and recoil. Now, we're playing veteran, so we obviously have the opportunity cost that we didn't take the veteran shout, so that's a big problem. This also... it got a buff recently such that it highlights enemies for 5 seconds, or refreshes when you killed a highlight enemy for another 5 seconds, which helps it a lot. And you can swap away from the weapon and swap back without interrupting the Executioner's Stance. And I think it had a higher cooldown before. It's now a 30-second cooldown. I just still don't think it's all that good, because here's the thing about veteran weapons. Right now in the veteran weapon sort of meta, I'll say, we have the bolter, we have the plasma gun, we have the what is now called the Vrax infantry auto gun, we have what else? Those are some just good examples off the top of my head, right? Those weapons are not really benefited by range weak spot damage or range damage. They already do so much damage. That's not going to help them reach that many breakpoints. And highlighting enemies is like, it can help you know where enemies are, I guess, but most of the time, like, the enemies you have to be aware of are the ones that can see you, and you can already see them. Like, through walls is useless. You can't shoot them through walls unless you have the plasma gun, of course. But if I can see a specialist, if I can see a trapper on my screen, I don't need him highlighted in yellow to see the stupid trapper, right? So I think that's kind of useless. I think this ability would go up a tier for me if it reloaded your ranged weapon when you equipped it, because then at least you could like mag dump with a gun and then instantly reload like the Ogren's ability does and pop it up. But it's just really frustrating that it equips your weapon, but it doesn't give you any ammo if you didn't have it already reloaded. And it gives you buffs that just aren't useful to the majority of good weapons right now. This needs to have some sort of instant reload and reload speed. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you gave the buffs that are available on the Ogren's gun ability and put them here, this ability would be way better. And it has 3 modifiers, but one of them enhances, puts the auras out for everybody to see, and that's kind of useless because, like, we got it. Like, we've already got the enemies highlighted. We're in charge of killing those enemies. Everybody else can focus on other stuff. We don't need to be like distracting our allies and telling them to go steal our kills. And then we've got outlining all human ranged enemies and all Ogren enemies. Outlining these enemies, it doesn't cause them to take any additional damage or anything. If those enemies being highlighted made them take the effects of like focus target or something, like, then that would be insane. If you could put your focus target, your increased damage taken by these enemies, on every highlighted enemy while this ability is active, this ability would be awesome because it would increase the damage for all your allies against these targets, specifically for you because you can find them. But then you would have a reason to take the aura sharing ability because allies could get bonus damage against these targets too. So I think that would be a really nice change for the ability. But right now, it just doesn't offer anything that, special that the veteran can do. I can already equip my ranged weapon by myself, and 25% damage is piddly compared to the absolute utility and dominance of the veteran shout. So C tier in all good conscience. All right, then we are going to get into these blitzes. So, blitzes, they are pretty good currently, honestly. We got a lot of really solid grenades, but only a couple of them really stand out. And first and foremost, we've got the Stun Storm grenade. Now, this grenade gets into the first problem that I'll bring up in the tree of placement. This grenade unfortunately happens to be underneath one of the two bad Zealot talent trees. The Zealot has two talent trees. Let me show you. The Zealot has these talent trees, right? These ones in the middle and the left don't offer anything that we really want in 99% of builds. The current Zealot builds pretty much all go for this path right here, and so knives become a very obvious choice. If you want to take any of these other two grenades, you have a huge talent point tax, and you're going to lose a ton of character power to get these grenades instead of the knife. If they did a rework for this class, I would love to see something like the other classes have, where you can actually end up choosing one of two of these depending on your path. That would free up some choices a little bit. So going back to the list, Sunstorm Grenade is going to get the B tier for me. It is a really, really good grenade, right? That stun effect is awesome. Like, again, just like Shout and a lot of good stuff, it bless me, it allows you to like act with impunity. You can do a bunch of stuff. You can act crazy and get a res you wouldn't otherwise been able to get. It buys a ton of time. It has a really, really long duration, a surprisingly long duration. However, it's just in a really, really inconvenient place in the tree. And I just don't think that anyone, like, I haven't seen one of these things in forever. And you also like kind of have to pick and choose your time to use it, because if you throw it into a pack of enemies and they're just walking towards you to attack you, it doesn't do anything. It is basically a clutch only grenade. Versus some of the other grenades in the game, which are like, hey, I see a big group of enemies and it'd be nice not to have to fight them. All right, there we go. Nice. Some free damage. This doesn't offer any damage. It's purely a utility grenade. It's not as bad as Smoke Grenade, but hey. And then we've got Immolation Grenade. This is going to give me my first D tier. First of all, this is underneath the like worst tree. We have to get base range damage, which is okay, and then I guess Purge the Unclean is okay, but then we have to take one of these two, which is just a straight talent tax. These are both worthless, and then we get the worst grenade that the Zealot has. This puts burns underneath enemies and staggers them very, very lightly, but those burns are not scaled for difficulty. So like on lower difficulties, you're playing on Malice, this will instantly kill everything that walks in the puddle of fire. But on Damnation, Arc Damnation, enemies will walk into this and be like, huh, what's that I like my feet feel a little bit warm, right? It's not going to evaporate them like it does in lower difficulties. And it gets to be hard to like kite enemies and keep them in this area because they're not dying fast enough. So it's just really difficult to play around, and it's just in a bad position on the tree. I don't think you should be taking this. I see it's the thing that it's like a choice that people make aesthetically because it's fun to use, but it's just not good. It just isn't good. It just doesn't do any damage at all. Compare that to our lovely dagger Blitz here. I'm going S tier with this dagger. Now I'm ranking these. Blitzes are ranked against Blitzes, Keystones are ranked against Keystones, Auras are ranked against Auras. So don't at me because the dagger is not as impactful to the game as the Veteran Shout or whatever. Fuck off. The dagger is one of the best Blitzes in the game because you do not have to ever rely on having the random grenade drops in the map. It instantly kills I think every special on a headshot. This thing does absurd headshot damage. So if you have any form of rending, like Uncanny Strike on your primary weapon, and then you throw this dagger at like a crusher, you'll chunk the crusher for half their health. This dagger can crit. In a very early patch of the game, it was made so it pierces through one enemy, so it doesn't have like as bad body blocking by some stuff, and you get like 12 of them, which is pretty nuts. And you start the game with all 12. Infiltrate, you start with all 12 of these grenades, and you regenerate them every time you get an elite kill, which is that's right? Why do I not know this? Yeah, killing elite and special enemies in melee replenishes a knife, which is awesome. And then ammo boxes replenish them, so if you need any ammo, you can pick them up and grab a couple extra knives too. So you'll pretty much always have them when you need them. And the extra thing I love about these knives is they really enable using some otherwise clunky weapons. So for instance, I'm speaking particularly of the bolter, which is like the best weapon you could be using in ranged on Zealot right now. Or if you wanted to be a little spicy, you could use the Purgation Flamer. Think about it. Both of these weapons have absurdly long spool up times where you pull them out and you're like, oh, let me get this thing racked. Chunk, chunk. Okay, now I'll fire. You can't do that if there's a trapper coming to get you. What you can do is the trapper is running straight towards you in a straight line because that's their AI. You can throw a knife directly into their head and kill them. It also has enough damage to insta-kill mutants on the modifier where it's like the low health, like swarms of mutants that come at you if you hit them in the head, which is pretty easy to do. All that good stuff. And it's just super solid. It also has a nice little bug slash feature where throwing a knife as you're pulling out your ranged weapon can completely skip the animation to swap to that weapon. So you can animation cancel and you can start firing like a half second sooner, which is a big deal. So S tier for sure. Then we've got the Big Bomb. Big Bomb is really, really limited by the fact it only has one charge. However, it is very impactful, and I'm going to give it A tier because one, super fun, awesome effect. Sound design and graphic design on this thing, peak. I know a lot of people give me shit for incorporating that in my tier list, but hey, it's my tier list. Fuck off, right? This just has such a amazing feeling, whether it's you throwing it or whether it's an ally Ogryn throwing it. Nothing feels better than like you're dealing with a big horde and some like a bunch of ragers or something comes in the room and then poof, and everything is just leveled. Everything is dead. And you're like, nice. Thanks, Ogryn. Again, really limited by having that one charge, but I think it's probably my favorite. I'm doing heresy against rock throwers here, but it's my favorite of the blitzes for Ogryn. Then we've got the Big Box of Hurt. Big Box of Hurt. C tier. So Big Box of Hurt it's come a long way. It's made some big strides since the game came out, right? Obviously, Big Box of Hurt, when the game came out, it literally just hit enemies and didn't do anything unless you took a talent that made it have grenades fall out of it, and it was only if the enemy was armored, the grenades would fall out of it. Now, if you hit enemy with it, these grenades fall out, and it causes like a cluster bomb effect, and it does some good stagger to enemies. But its damage is kind of piddly. Like, it's not gonna do any kill. It's not gonna kill anything that's armored. The direct hit does stagger pretty good, but you know, it's also you know, it's an ability it's charge limited. This thing also only gets 2 charges, which is a really, really big detriment to it. I just don't think it's good enough for having only 2 charges, right? It's a thing and a trend with the grenades or the blitz abilities that the ones that have 2 charges are just not as good as some of the ones that have more charges. I think there needs to be a balance pass on some of these blitzes is what I'm saying, because this thing having 2 charges, it's just not enough for the effect that it has. Meanwhile, Big Friendly Rock, which I would say is you know, I'll give it S tier. Just because it's ranked against other things. It generates itself every 45 seconds. It has a big wallop of damage. It's an instant kill on a special mutant, whatever. It can stagger. If you hit a piece of Nurgle in the eye with it, or the weak spot with it, it'll spit out the enemy. I think the Ogryns know how to use this rock. Really didn't. I'll put that in A tier. They really know how to use this rock, and it does take a long time to equip. I wish it was a quick throw like the Zealot's Knives. I think that's what elevates the Zealot's Knives a lot, is you don't have to prep or put away your weapons or anything. You just go and you throw a knife and that trapper is dead. This, you cannot be like, oh, there's a trapper coming, I need to pull out my rock and kill him. It's like, okay, I hear the mutant, I'm turning around and I'm hurling a rock in that direction. Or you can use it as an opening salvo to knock out like a gunner or something like that. Yeah, it's nice to have another ability that doesn't rely on having grenade packs, because you're not always going to have grenades accessible to you. And there's not always going to be a veteran who has like the field supply talent that gives you grenades out of packs. So having these for free every 45 seconds is very, very nice. You do start with all of them, Infiltrate, and And yeah, you won't be taxing the team by taking all of their ammo crates like you will if you're playing with Big Boom. Because if you're playing with this one, every time you throw a grenade, you have to grab an ammo crate from your team, which it can be kind of detrimental to them. Yeah, oh well. All right, let's go on to, this is the veteran grenade, right? Man, these look so freaking similar. Yeah, this is the good one. This is going S tier, baby. So this is the shredder grenade, the frag grenade, as it used to be called. And the shredder grenade, when the game came out, if you just watched my last video, when the game came out, it didn't actually have any inbuilt bleed. It was just a frag grenade, and you had to take a talent to make it bleed enemies. But now this thing bleeds enemies, and it bleeds them quite a lot. It gives them 6 stacks of bleed, and this thing, this is what I was saying before, that the balance path is not right. It does a good amount of damage, and it staggers enemies quite heavily. So you throw it into like a pack of crushers or maulers that are coming in. They won't fall down, but they'll get that like 2-step stagger where they like shake their head and they like almost lose their footing a little bit. And they'll get 6 stacks of bleed put on them, which is very nice for just spreading a ton of damage around. It has a nice radius for that. And you get 3 of these bad boys, which for veteran is really, really important. And let's actually talk about crack grenade. I'm gonna leave it there. It's a super solid grenade. It's the best grenade to pick, hands down on the veteran. Let's talk about why crack grenade does not live up to that. Crack grenade is going B tier. So crack grenade is very usable. It's going to eliminate crushers and heavy threats, which is fine. It instantly solves the problem of there's a couple of bulwarks coming towards me. Throw a crack grenade on them. You know, they're going to get staggered and their shield is going to get opened, or they're going to be the one that dies outright. However, we have a couple of talents on the veteran that we're pretty much always picking. And those talents are Demolition Stockpile, which replenishes 1 grenade every 60 seconds. And Demolition Team, which gives you a 5% chance to replenish your grenade when you or an ally in coherency kills an elite or specialist enemy. So what can happen if you are using crack grenades is you throw a crack grenade and it lands on an enemy and then it blows up and it gives you that replenishment because it attaches to like elite enemies, to armored enemies. It blows up and you'll get that 5% proc. You'll get lucky and you'll get a demolition team grenade back, and you'll get back to that that 2 maximum grenades, and then the timer will roll over 1 minute and say, hey, here's another free grenade, but you're already at maximum grenades, so it doesn't give you anything. So, and you don't ever want to be at 0 grenades. So if you ended up throwing 2 and you didn't get lucky, and your replenishment from the demolition stockpile is a long time away, now you're sitting at 0 grenades waiting for either one of those things to happen. So the really nice thing about having 3 charges on a grenade for veteran is that you can hurl 2 of those bad boys. You always have 1 in the pocket just in case shit goes really, really bad and you need that grenade to bust yourself out of a situation, which, by the way, the shredder is fantastic at doing that and clearing a space and getting rid of crowds and stuff, and the crack does not really. And then you have the possibility of regenerating 1 from getting a kill. 1 out of 20 enemies is going to give you a grenade, and you still have space in your pockets to get 1 more from that demolition stockpile. So if grenades were, I think this would be a different situation if grenades were uncapped, if demolition stockpile could just keep generating you grenades over your cap, or if you had maximum grenades and demolition stockpile rolls around and it's like, okay, here's your free grenade, it would hold it until whenever you threw your next grenade and it would refill it then. But since it refills every 60 seconds, rain, sleet, or shine, you can lose out on grenades by having a cap of only 2. Now, crack grenade is bad, but it's not smoke grenade bad. Smoke grenade is just worthless. First of all, it blocks your allies' line of sight. They can't see shit through this thing. So who do you think has better aim? Well, this is a very leading question. It could be interpreted several different ways. What I'm trying to say is that if you have allies that are any good at all, they can fucking aim way better and do more damage than any amount of gunners or whatever could do through that smoke. But if you put a smoke down, suddenly your ally who's playing Scryer's Gaze Psyker and has 1200 hours, they can't do jack shit because they can't see where the fucking enemies are. So you're kind of cucking your allies by putting this smoke grenade down. And it doesn't have any other effects. It literally just blocks line of sight. And that has very, very wonky effects on like enemy AI. That can mean sort of unpredictable effects on AI. And we don't like that in this game, right? We want a very predictable AI. We like them to stand still in one place so they can get shot in the head. We don't want them to, do something that we've never seen them do before because the smoke grenade tells their AI, oh, they should charge in or they should do whatever. And it's not consistent. If it had a very consistent way it worked, it would be way, way better. And it also needs to do something outside of just blocking the line of sight. It needs to buff allies who stand within it. I think I was sort of spitballing some ideas for this blitz with my chat on stream, and I think the best idea I came up with is it should have some sort of stim effect. Perhaps like a little bit of a movement speed or attack speed buff if you remain in it and for a time after, and it should suppress fire. So you can use this as a defensive tool to block off a room such that no flame grenades or flamers are going to be able to light their fire in that room. So you get 30 seconds or 15 with the base duration in order to fight in there without worrying about those things. That would make smoke grenade usable, but currently it's just not usable. And it's also on the bad side of the tree. It's not near survivalist, which is the good aura. We'll get to in a little minute here. All right, now we've got the 3 Psyker Blitzes, and these are very interesting. They're they're their own thing. They're not like grenades. First, we got Head Pop. I'm going to go ahead and put Head Pop right in the B tier. Brain Burst is like, it was obviously the thing that we started the game with. It's a fine ability, and it has a pretty good target selection for finding high threat targets. It does a solid amount of damage. It can be a good filler when you're like introing to a room or just trying to support your team. But it's just really slow in the current meta, if that makes any sense. Right now, we have Scryer's Gaze Psychers who can just, they can see an enemy and they can point their gun at it and they can melt them to death in 0.1 seconds. And they can do that 50 times in a minute. The Brain Burst just takes like 4 seconds to kill or maim a single enemy. And I just don't think it's standing up to its legacy at this point. It needs something to bring it up to the next level. Then we got Smite. Smite, I'm going to give this one... Okay, I'm going to give Smite A, but here's the caveat I'm going to give you. Do not go Empowered Psionics and be a Smite-only Psyker, all right? Smite is good because it is the only ability that the Psyker has that can really... solve a situation, right? If your team is getting crowded by a bunch of crushers and there's a boss and stuff, you can put all those crushers and stuff on pause using Smite for a good amount of time. It's really nice at that, at providing CC where otherwise you're a class that doesn't have any generally. So I'll give Smite the A for that, just because like that ability to provide that much CC on such a short notice with no resource investment. You don't need to have a grenade. You don't need to, have your ultimate up. It's just there for you, and it costs a little bit of peril, but that can be a big lifesaver for teams. But do not resort to using this as your only source of anything. It just isn't. It isn't viable, and it's really annoying to, just have a person who's not really contributing any damage. They're just kind of shocking everything. You could just kill stuff. It will work way better. And then we have a Sail. I think a Sail is also a B tier. And that's I can't in all good conscience put it down in C tier. I think it still has its place. It does fairly decent damage. If you're playing Auric, Quick Play, Damnation, it's still going to kill lots of enemies. And there's plenty of builds where you can throw out some assails and then do some other stuff on the side with, shooting. Like I have a hybrid las gun or a hybrid gun assail build that I think works really well. Assail is a nice gap filler because it allows you to use some extra resources to use your peril on gun builds. Your 2 choices on gun builds are Smite and Assail, really, because they're on the right side of the tree, and they are something you can weave in. They don't require, Assail doesn't require a huge time investment. Smite does require that big time investment. So yeah, Smite is held back by that a little bit, but I'll still give it an A just because it has a lot more uses, and when it's used appropriately, it can be really, really powerful. Okay, here we are a day later and a day wiser, and I haven't changed any of my opinions too much. There might be a few things that move up or down a tier in here, but just barely, in my opinion. But one that you're not going to budge my opinion on is Martyrdom, the first of our Keystones, and the first one to fall straight into D tier. Now, Martyrdom is just such a noob trap, in my opinion. This requires you to play well above the skill level that's required to play with either of the other two Keystones, and it doesn't reward you proportionally. It offers what seems like a very tantalizing reward, 56% melee damage, as well as a good chunk that's like 32 or 30 something percent attack speed and a bunch of toughness damage reduction when you are missing your health, up to however many wounds you have. Now the problem with that is you've got this extra toughness damage reduction, which is essentially nullified by the fact that you lose 51% toughness by not having 3 toughness curios. You'll instead have 3 wound curios. And then you've got to consider the fact that, you can only get this benefit when you are on low HP, which means that standing in a health kit or healing at a med station, all those are going to nerf you and set you back to 0. So if you ever do have to heal up because you're about to die, well, now you need to waste most of that health in order to get back to the point where you're actually doing anything extra. Compare that to Momentum, or compare that to Blazing Piety, which we'll talk about in just a second, but those both offer just straight buffs, very strong buffs, especially Blazing Piety, that have no downsides associated with them. They're purely upsides. And you are playing with fire, playing on low health in this game. It's gotten a little bit better because fire no longer instantly breaks your toughness, but there's several other things in the game now that can instantly down you, not withstanding until death, the death prevention perk on Zealot. But if you have to take that, that's already kind of a waste. That's a waste of 2 points if other builds don't take that if you're playing well. But on Martyrdom, you pretty much have to have it. Otherwise, you're going to get killed by being too near to a barrel when it explodes, or my personal new favorite, being anywhere within like 50 meters of a flamer. If they have their tank ruptured and they get killed, they'll explode and they'll damage you for a big portion of your health through your toughness. And that's the sort of stuff that you just can't account for all the time when you're playing as Martyrdom. That's going to put you into a down state when before, you were supercharged and you were playing on the edge of, destiny, and like, oh my god, like I'm a god, I can dodge every attack. But eventually some AoE from a barrel you didn't hear or something is going to catch you, and it's going to put you into a down state. And then once you're down, no matter how many wounds you have, you will die on the ground if your team can't get to you. And a lot of times being downed in a bad situation at the wrong time, it can end a game. You won't be able to be gotten, and it could snowball and end the game. So I think whenever possible, do not play with these like low health, play styles. It doesn't work fundamentally in this game because the buffs it offers are not that useful to us. Attack speed is probably the most useful thing you can get there, but the damage increase, which is only to melee damage, is really 50% sounds like it's a lot, but it's really not, because there's a ton of other ways to increase your damage in the tree, such as by stacking finesse and critical chance and all that good stuff. That's the ways you really, really increase your damage in this game, especially for Zealot. And it just baits you into playing on low health and putting yourself in a precarious situation so that you're going to be a liability for the team. And so I just really, really encourage players to steer away from Martyrdom, because it requires just such investment, and then you have more investment in terms of you need to be playing this high risk playstyle for not enough reward, in my opinion. So D tier for Martyrdom. We'll grab the next Keystone, which is Blazing Piety. Blazing Piety is an A tier Keystone. It gives you base 15% crit. It can go up to 25% if you go down the right side path, and that buff can be sustained just by getting crits if you go the right side path. If you go the left side path, you get toughness damage reduction, 25% of it, but you can only sustain the buff by killing enemies. So, you know, you got to kind of take the trade-off there. You can become very tanky with the left side path, but generally, you know, lately I've been tending to think that the Zealot has enough toughness damage reduction, and it's nice to have that ability to keep this buff up 100% of the time and get that extra crit. All right, this is Momentum. Momentum gives you up to 15% attack speed and damage whenever you trigger it and cash in these momentum stacks from moving around. Obviously, this is just a straight buff. You know, it's not as much of a buff as Martyrdom is, but you can always get it, whether you're on full health or 1 HP, you've always got this buff going. And cashing in momentum stacks can also reward you with regaining toughness if you take one of the nodes, which is very, very impactful, I think. It can cover up for some, like a little bit of missing toughness every now and then. So I really like this Keystone. I think it's very solid. If you're already crit capped, or your build for some reason doesn't really use crit at all, go for momentum in a build, and it's going to augment your damage in an extra way. I know that a lot of builds that use like dagger and stuff, that you're getting enough crits already through Scourge and through the baseline crit of the dagger. You don't need Blazing Piety, so you'll pull more damage out of having that 15% attack speed and 15% damage. All right, moving on to Burst Limiter Override. I'm going to give this a C tier. Actually, no, I'm going to give it a D tier. I think Burst Limiter Override is just not useful at all, really. If you think about it like this, it gives you, at a base, just for this Keystone, this Keystone itself, it gives you an 8% chance for your shot, for your bullet, to not consume any ammo. That is without taking any of the other auxiliary things around it. I understand that there's augments that make it so that, oh, when you get a free bullet, it gives you 200% cooldown for yada yada yada. Blazing Piety, by comparison, gives you a 15% chance to crit. That is huge. You know, this is 15% damage and 15% attack speed. This is a 8% chance to not consume a bullet. And if you're not using a fast firing weapon, you'll almost never have this proc at a time where it's of any use at all. Like, you know, you might be shooting a random trapper and you shoot him and it doesn't take the ammo, and you're like, oh, okay, great. Whoop-de-doo, I got a free ammo. This effectively will give you like 12.5%, or sorry, no, it'll give you 8% more ammo. And then if you take the additional node for it that gives you a 12% chance for it to proc, then, you know, you get 12% more ammo. Compare that to a single node that you already have on the tree that's going to grant you 25% ammo. And then you've got another node on the veteran tree that's 25% ammo. And those are just regular nodes. They're not even Keystones. And those are very predictable. You can always like count on having that extra ammo. And that extra ammo is affected by, like, you know, ammo pickups and scavenger, like all of those feed into it very nicely. Having a larger ammo pool is always useful. If this was a Keystone that just said, you have, you know, 12% more ammo, that would be better than free shots every, you know, every 1 in 12 randomly. So that just really irritates me. The other thing about it is it's not predictable, so you really can't even use it on single shotguns. If I knew that I could be like, okay, my 8th shot will be for free, so I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, I'll get to double shot. I'll be able to shoot 2 kickbacks or 2 grenade launcher shots back to back without having to reload. That would be actually kind of useful, but it doesn't do that. It's completely random when it's going to go off, so a lot of times it'll proc when it's just not useful at all. So I think also, I mean, it is a huge loss in terms of survivability and damage to go into this path for even for Gun Ogren, and you really don't need it. It's not that much more ammo economy. It is way more beneficial to pretty much every Ogren build to go into either the middle tree for defense if you're already going Gun Ogren, which we'll talk about in a second, or go the left tree if you really want to be meta about it and be heavy hitter Ogren. Speaking of that middle tree, we've got Feel No Pain, right? Or Feel No Pain. Feel No Pain, I'm gonna give a solid B tier. Feel No Pain gives you a stacking buff. It lasts forever, but you get a buff every 3 seconds. It can stack up to 10 times, and every stack gives you 2.5% toughness damage reduction and toughness regeneration, and that regeneration just means the speed at which you regenerate your coherency toughness regen. So it's really not much of anything. It has one really good node on it, which is the, I think it's called Strongest, and that means that instead of waiting 3 seconds to gain a stack, you can just shove an enemy and that will regain you a stack instantly. So if you've ever got in a situation where your damage reduction from this is low because you've taken a lot of hits recently, you can just shove an enemy repeatedly and you'll get all those stacks back really quickly. So that's a really nice one. It helps you to keep these stacks high, and so therefore you're taking 25% less damage, which is great because the Ogryn is king of regenerating his toughness. So to extend that toughness even further is amazing. It also has kind of an interesting little node on the left side that can make it so that your when you lose all the stacks of this, it shoves back any enemies around you with like a 30-second cooldown. This can get you out of like dogs pinning you or something like that, and just might make your clutching in certain situations a little better, but I generally don't think it's worth it. We just want to grab the Keystone and maybe the Strongest node in order to get some extra stuff, but mostly it's just really good because this is a nice damage reduction node. You know, it's going to help you with survivability. It's going to allow you to not worry about incoming damage as much, but doesn't have anything super crazy. Then we've got Heavy Hitter, which is very, very solid, and Heavy Hitter is pretty much what all the good Ogryn builds. You know, when you have an Ogryn in your game and they just clap everything to death and you're running behind them like, oh my god, this guy does like one-shot a crusher. They're using Heavy Hitter, and Heavy Hitter stacks 5 times. Each stack gives you, is it 7.5 or is 5%? Ogryn Games Lantern. There it is. Okay, oh, that's why I was seeing 7.5. Yeah, it's 5% damage for 7.5 seconds, which is a long time, and it stacks 5 times. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't stack multiple times on one hit, but you can get this thing stacked up super easy, and once you have 5 stacks, that's 25% heavy attack damage, which is something that the Ogryn absolutely loves, because heavy attacks are his most damaging abilities, and he also loves to use Batter, which I talked about previously, but Batter up here, doing those heavy melee hits is how you scale your damage as Ogryn. It also has these lovely little nodes on the side. Unstoppable gives you 100% extra replenishment from melee kills. So instead of getting 5% when you kill an enemy with a melee kill, you get 10%. And so you'll like hit a horde and you'll kill 4 enemies in it, and your toughness will jump up 40%. Really, really amazing to be able to have that. And you can get this one over here, Just Getting Started, which is 10% attack speed, which is a lot when you're using a big, slow hitting, heavy attacking weapon. This one in the bottom middle is useless because you're probably not going to be weaving lights and heavies. You're either going to do all lights or all heavies. Then we've got Marksman's Focus. Marksman's Focus, I think I have to give it a C tier. The reason I'm giving it a C tier is because it's just not in a good place in terms of the weapons that we have currently in Darktide. I was talking with a friend yesterday, and we talked a lot about this node and how he thinks it should have been designed, and I talked about how I thought it should have been designed, and we sort of came to the agreement that you know, if this node was functioning as intended, you should be able to play like John Wick, you know, just going through the level and getting a headshot and then moving on. And that is kind of the like functionality that it gives you. However, there's a lot of weapons in the game, a lot of weapons in the game where getting headshots is very, very frustrating because weapons in this game have huge stability issues, like way more than in other games. If you've ever tried to use an infantry autogun or even some of the vigilant or auto guns they're called now, their recoil is like all over the place. So yeah, in taking this node, you really have to be playing like out of your mind to get any considerable benefit out of it. And it's like, it does give really solid like finesse damage and reload speed, which is very, very nice. But I just don't think that it's anything that is, and it's range finesse only, by the way. I just don't think it's anything that is consistent enough, because you only get 3 seconds during which you can move between headshots, and if you get a headshot kill, you get 6 seconds. I would like that duration to be at least like 5 and 10 seconds or something like that, because Darktide is a movement focused shooter. Movement is the single most important skill in the game, and if you're running a Keystone, and I ran this Keystone yesterday with a build, and I really tried to make it work. I was landing headshots very consistently, but sometimes you just can't have your range weapon out and be landing headshots. You need to be swapping your melee, you need to be moving, you need to be rotating, and during that time, a very, very short amount of time, you will lose all your stacks, because you lose like 1 stack every 0.5 or 1 second when you're moving outside of the buff. So I hate how fast this just disappears and turns into nothing for you. Then we've got the focus target. This is A tier. Focus target is super useful. It's incredible usage to your team. It's 20% at base, and if you have the upgraded 8 stacks, it can give you up to 32% extra damage taken by the target. We talked about previously how that taken by the target status effect is really impactful, because it multiplies the damage that is incoming to them. So, you know, Path of Exile players, what's up, homies? You know what I'm talking about here when I say the more multiplier. This is a more multiplier. All the incoming damage, if there's a super juice psyker who's popping off of Scryer's Gaze, they've got 30 stacks, you know, they are gunning it, it's plus 60% damage. They are just like leveling this thing, and now it's gonna multiply that by 1.32. That's crazy damage. To put it another way, if you tag a boss, or if you tag any enemy with this and you have 5 stacks, imagine 1/5 of their health bar just deleting itself. Suddenly their health bar is 1/5 lower. If you have the 8 stacks, imagine if 32% of that boss's health bar was just cut off. If there was just like a line on the health bar that says, okay, if you get them below here, they instantly die. That is the power of this, and it can make these engagements with high threat enemies that much shorter. In addition to other benefits it can provide, but I don't think those are as important. It's just the whole team damage augment that it can provide. This thing just like instantly trivializes bosses and all that stuff. Then we've got the weapon specialist. I love this blessing. This is one of probably my favorite blessing. This is probably my favorite Keystone in the game, to be honest with you. It is so fun because what it does is if you get melee kills, it gives your first range attack when you swap to your range weapon, a 33% chance to crit, and it stacks up to 10 times. So you're guaranteed a crit after 3 melee kills. And then you get, if you get a range kill and then swap back to your melee, I think you get like 15% dodge distance and dodge speed or something like that. And it's really solid as far as the buffs that it gives you. And it encourages this very dynamic and like flow-based gameplay style where you're swapping back and forth between weapons. It can make certain weapons that have like very painfully slow reloads, like revolver or plasma gun or bolter. It can reload them for free with you if you take the lock and loaded perk below it on the bottom left, that reloads 3.3% of your magazine rounded up for you whenever you get a melee kill. You do have to swap to the weapon to get that reload in there, but you know, if you're a skilled player and you don't want to be spending ammo, what you can be doing is just get a melee kill, QQ, and swap and get that reload real quick, and then do it again. So this enables play styles like the Doomslayer, where you're just pumping out double barrel shotgun shots. Every melee kill, you shoot a shotgun shot into their face. Same thing with the revolver, same thing with the plasma gun. Really fun, really interesting play style, and it has a couple of really good nodes, that reload node and the one below it. All the way at the very bottom middle, that is 20% toughness every time you swap back and forth on getting kills, which is great survivability for the skill. Then we have the warp charges, whatever this is called. These warp charges, A tier for sure. This is like the dedicated caster route for the Psyker. These warp charges have an amazing synergy with all things casting because they reduce the cooldown of your abilities. The baseline number for these is 4, and they give 7.5% cooldown reduction each. So, you know, you can map that out. That is 30% cooldown if you only have 4. If you have the 6 warp charges, which you can get as an augment, that's 45% cooldown reduction. So if you're a bubble psyker, that makes your bubble up sooner than the bubble normally expires. If you can keep these warp charges, if you have the warp charges when you use the ability, and then if you're using Venting Shriek, you basically got it all the time. And the really broken interaction with this and Venting Shriek is that you can get warp charges from killing enemies that are soul blazed. So the really easily abused one is this Venting Shriek, Purgatus Staff, and you put soul blaze on enemies with the Purgatus Staff and or Venting Shriek them, which adds more stacks of soul blaze. Then that kills them, and you have a 10% chance to grant a warp charge on Soul Blaze enemy kill, and that'll give them all those charges to you, and then your Venting Shriek will be up 45% sooner. So you can just overload yourself in no time again. And as well as these provide like a base, I think it's like 4% base damage per warp charge, which means like 24% base damage, which is nuts if you have all 6 charges. And then you can get some like toughness regen and stuff as well. Really, really nice, especially if you're a caster. This one is Empowered Psionics. I'm going D tier. I'm going D tier with Empowered Psionics. I just don't see a place where it's useful anymore. Remember, Empowered Psionics gives you a charge that says your next Blitz ability, meaning either a Smite, your Assail, or your Head Pop, is empowered. And it has like a 7.5% chance to give you one on an elite kill. You can improve that through one of the other blessings, but the improvements to these skills is not that impactful. It makes the Assail not take a charge and do 1.5 times damage. Whoop-de-doo, right? 1 free Assail. These are things that are on like a 4-second cooldown to give you a free charge anyway. So I just don't see using that over something that can augment your base damage and give you a lower ult cooldown, or something that just augments your headshot damage and all that good stuff. Your opportunity cost for taking this node is really, really high, and it offers you no other benefits other than improving your Blitz ability, which most skilled psychers are not using their Blitz ability to do most of their damage. If you're a Smite only psycher, which as before I told you, please don't do that. Don't take my A tier endorsement here to mean go be a Smite only psycher. Unless you're a Smite only psycher, this is not going to be anything important for you. I would rather you grab one of the other two. Speaking of Disrupt Destiny, Disrupt Destiny is for sure A tier. This thing gives such insane stats that it's like it was tailor-made to go with Scryer's Gaze. Look at that, they're lining up perfectly. Disrupt Destiny gives you a stacking buff that, first of all, when you kill a marked target, they're highlighted. They sort of have like this hazy blue effect on them. You can see through walls, so you can like hunt this target. When you kill them, you gain a 20% speed buff that lasts for like 4 seconds, and then you gain 10% of your toughness back, or maybe those two numbers are flipped, whatever it is. It's like, that's small potatoes. The big potatoes here is that you also gain a stack of Disrupt Destiny, and Disrupt Destiny gives you headshot like finesse damage. Let me actually pull it up because it's very it is quite very detailed here. Psyker. Why am I like struggling to figure out which class I'm looking for? Okay, yeah, there it is. Yeah, I was right about the numbers before. Precision bonus gives you 1% damage, 2% critical damage, and 2.5% weak spot damage. Remember, you can get a critical weak spot hit, and all 3 of those numbers would factor in. So the more stacks of this you have, the harder your critical weak spot hits are hitting, and that's something we're really, really good at, especially if we're running Scryer's Gaze and we're already focusing on being a high precision, psyker. This is like the exact stats we want in that case, and having that bonus movement speed and toughness is just icing on the cake. Now you have 2 different routes you can go here. You can go perfectionism, but as you all know, I don't think this is very feasible for most players to do because it only has a 4-second duration for that precision bonus. And what will happen is, like, if you get a bad Disrupt Destiny and it puts the target behind a wall, you'll probably lose a stack or 2 before you can get to that target to claim the stacks. Or, you go into, there's plenty of areas in Darktide where there's just not that many enemies, or it's a transition place with an elevator or an airlock. And if you're losing 1 stack every 4 seconds, you can very quickly decay a lot of those stacks and end up not having them be very useful. Lingering Influence increases the duration to 10 seconds, and it's way more useful just because, yeah, we've got, so much more uptime on this, right? If you took a 60-second if you took a 60-second pause in gameplay, you've only lost 6 stacks. If you take a 60-second pause in gameplay with this, you've lost 15 stacks, right? So that's the difference there. Use at your own discretion. If you do want to use perfectionism, definitely take Cruel Fortune. This will allow you to keep those stacks up much better, because this will grant you 3 stacks on a Disrupt Destiny kill, so you can max it out way easier. All right, and that takes us all the way through all the Keystones. Then we got to get through these auras. Let's knock these out real quick. There's not a whole lot of very interesting auras across the game, and we'll start with a very uninteresting one, which is Bonebreaker's aura. This is a C tier aura. I don't want to rank it any higher because it really just doesn't give anything of effect. This is 10% heavy attack damage. It's on the Ogre and it's on the left tree, which is the good tree. So it's in a good placement, but it just does nothing. Like 10% heavy attack for the Ogre is fine, but he has so much heavy attack damage already. That's just like, if this was toughness damage reduction or something else, or health or whatever, it would be way better. As a defensive stat, we just don't need this little extra boost to heavy attacks on the Ogre. We've already got plenty, and most of your allies are not using heavy attacks. Well, with the dueling sword out now, they might be, but you know, it doesn't need 10%. That 10% damage boost is like, you know, nothing. But however, comparing that to an S tier aura, which is the survivalist or scavenger, survivalist, yeah, survivalist. 1% ammo whenever you or an ally in coherency kills an elite or specialist enemy with a cooldown of 5 seconds. And this applies to all members of the team. So I actually responded to a comment in a video from a content creator I won't name earlier today, someone asking like, why is this considered so good? And here's why it's so good. So if you have other players in your team, say you're using like, you know, infantry auto gun, so you get about 7 bullets when you get a kill with an infantry auto gun. That doesn't sound like a whole lot, but a mission is 30 minutes long roughly, and if you even get the effect of this every 10 seconds, it's available every 5 seconds. Well, let's say that, you know, it's a kind of a slow game, so every 10 seconds you get the benefit of it. That means you get 6% of your ammo per minute, and that means that over the course of the game you get 180% of your ammo. So that's almost 2 full reloads of all of your ammo in the gun, which is a lot. And then keep in mind the fact that if you have other ammo hungry people on your team, so like Ogrins, they might be running the Rumbler or the Kickback, and Zealots, they might be running the Revolver or the Shotgun. Those weapons, they get a lot of benefit out of this because, like, you know, 1% for the Kickback gives you 1 ammo. So like this is going to keep those guys way more satiated in terms of their ammo needs, which means that there's more ammo to go around for the team. And yeah, just having like, it's almost like having it's 1.8 ammo crates that the whole team can use, more or less. And that's assuming that you're only getting the kills every 10 seconds. But in higher tiers of play, you're almost always triggering this like every 5 seconds as often as it's up. This has always been probably the best aura in the game, or close to the best aura in the game. It used to be super busted. It had no cooldown, and so you'd have veterans who would run up to packs of like crushers and stuff, and they would pop their ultimate, which at the time reloaded your weapon fully for you and gave you 75% toughness damage reduction, and you would walk up to enemies and you would blast them all the way with the bolter. You would get all of your ammo back because you're killing elite enemies with no cooldown, and then you would pop the ultimate again, reload the bolter, and mag dump again instantly. Very, very broken at the time, and it breaks the ammo economy in the game because there's enough ammo in the maps already such that, you know, you're not supposed to run out unless you're really, really fighting this war of attrition, and this breaks that, where, you know, you don't really have to worry about having to swap to melee at any point if you're running this. So S tier for sure. Then we've got I'm gonna give another S tier here. This is Benediction. This is a Zealot aura. Absolute S tier, 15% toughness damage reduction to the whole team. It's something that the team doesn't have to think about, right? It's just gonna make you tankier without you having to worry about, oh my gosh, like, you know, am I like, you know, am I like, do the enemies need to be suppressed, or, you know, whatever. there's no qualifiers on it. It's just, hey, whatever toughness you have, and remember, toughness right now is king in the game. Whatever toughness you have is extended by 15%. This is incredibly valuable for Psyker and Ogren especially. Both of those classes have very, very little toughness damage reduction. The Ogren has 30% across his tree in the smaller nodes, and the Psyker has like 33%, between 10 and 33% in the most common node that they take. So the Psykers especially can be very, very fragile, and this 15% adds a lot of survivability for them. So yeah, there's just an amazing, amazing aura, the best one on the Zealot, and thankfully it's right over, it's right under his best path to take, and it's right over one of his very solid abilities in the charge, Fury of the Faithful. All right, then we've got this node for the veteran, C tier, I guess. This is 5% damage. There's minor nodes on the tree that give you 5% damage. So 5% damage is so little, and it is so nothing. And to show you where this is in the tree, it's right in the center. Here's the thing about the veteran tree. The only reason you would take this is it saves you a point. Actually, it doesn't save you a point because you want to go for voice of command. So you want to get the good grenade, the shredder grenade, and that pretty much lines you up to just take survivalist. Why not? You could take the crack grenade and then go down the middle and grant fire team and then come down here and just save 1 point. But fire team 5% damage is nothing. There is almost 0 cases where you are going to hit an enemy and you're going to be 5% damage off of killing them, especially considering this 5% damage does not stack additively, it's multiplicatively. So consider all the other damage increases you have from all the other different, bullshit that you have on the tree, like this 15% base damage and 30% weak spot damage. 5% more damage multiplied into that, it's not even, it's an increase of 5. Like, it's nothing. And so it's just not useful. And it's over a mediocre grenade or under a mediocre grenade, and it's right next to Survivalist. Just take Survivalist. Way better aura. All right, then we've got this one. Again, this is a better aura than this one. However, the problem is this is what we call a talent tax. So you come down this way, and you get to here, and you are not taking smoke grenade, right? You reference this list because this is the gospel, and you see that smoke grenade is in D tier. So you're immediately okay, I'm not taking smoke grenade. My choices are crack or shredder. If you take crack grenades, the goal is to get to voice of command because this is the best ability in the game. You could be going infiltrate. I don't know why you would, but if you want to get to voice of command and you take crack grenades, that's going to be, hey, 1 extra point, please, in order to come over here and get one of these 2 admittedly pretty decent talents in order to get 5% movement speed and then go back. If you take the good grenade, the shredder frag grenade, one of the best grenades in the game, that's an extra 2 points you have to spend to get close and kill. 5% movement speed for you and allies is a lot. Like, movement speed is broken in this game. Having more movement speed breaks the game wide open. I'm sure that Zealots can show you why that is the case. But do not sacrifice points to get over to that aura. There is almost no builds in the game where this is the aura you want to end up taking. If you want to go for infiltrate, I guess you could take this aura, but in that case, really make certain that you aren't taking a shredder, because that is so much points wasted to come all the way across horizontally like this, and for not much benefit. All right, let's move on. This is the Zealot Prayer thing. What's it called? There it is. It cleanses your corruption, beacon of purity. I don't know. I guess another C tier for this one. Here's the problem. It doesn't prevent you from getting the corruption. So what'll happen, the ways you get corruption are from standing in snail trails or being eaten by bosses, specifically the one boss that actually eats you, being hit by poxwalkers. They put corruption on you if they hit you, if they hit your health. You could also have a grimoire. You could also have a grimoire on the team, and you could also be standing around one of the eyeballs you have to burst to progress certain events. Those can all corrupt you, right? But they're going to corrupt you no matter what. If the burster hits you, it corrupts you for 50 corruption damage. This allows you to heal that off. So you won't have that health anymore. You'll still be missing the health where the corruption was, but you won't be corrupted. Here's the thing about this. There are other ways to clear your corruption in the game. There's actually 3 other ways to clear the corruption. If you use a Medicae, it clears all of your corruption and fills your health totally. If you use a green syringe, it clears one wound worth of corruption and heals you for the same amount. So those are 2 ways that are in the game now that are very easy to cleanse corruption. And then the other way to cleanse corruption is the only way that this benefits you, that having this aura benefit you, is if you have health kits on the team, right? Because you can't heal past wherever the purple is on your bar. This will remove the purple so that you can heal up fully with health kits. However, there's another class that we just looked at a second ago that has this node right here. Veteran has field improvisation, which if any veteran on the team has this, those medipacks, the health kit, is going to cleanse corruption already. So you end up being useless because the one thing you'd want to cleanse that corruption for, which is using a health kit and getting a full heal, their health kits can already do that for you. So just generally not good. This could be made a lot better if instead of cleansing 1.5 corruption per second, it just said 25% corruption damage resistance to the team. There you go. That would be way better because it would keep the overall damage from grimoires, holding grimoires much lower for the team. It would make the damage impact from bursters and other corrupting effects lower. You wouldn't have to worry about healing that corruption off. You just would take less. I think that would be way more beneficial to the team in this like damage over time thing, because yeah, you would have less chunk removed from your life in this first place. Oh boy, then we got Loner. I'm going to put Loner into D tier. I have a soft spot in my heart for Loner. I want to just speak for a moment here on Loner and, give it its eulogy. Loner has a couple of uses, but I just do not think it should be or really is used in cooperative team play in an effective way by most players. There is one build that you should be using with Loner if you're going to use it, and that's if you're running a stealth zealot and you're running way ahead of the team with Shroud Field, you're getting engaged, you're getting objectives done, you're way out of coherency with the team, right? The problem with being out of coherency with the team in a general sense is that the game can detect when players are out of coherency. It runs a check every so often and it says, hey, has any player been just kind of isolated for a while? And that's when you'll hear your character say the voice line that's like, oh, I should really get back to the team. Where's my bloody team gone? Or whatever. That's when you know the game is like about to fuck you, because what it'll do is it'll spawn a disabler, it'll spawn a mutant, it'll spawn a trapper, it'll spawn a dog. One of those 3 will get spawned and it'll send it on you specifically. Now the game has these normal protocols when it runs to spawn specials in waves and stuff, but that one is spawned extra just to get your ass because you've been out of coherency for so long. This prevents that because you're always counted as being in 2 coherency. So that is nice. It allows you to be the solo operative and get away from your team. If you're doing solo speedruns, sure, take Loner. But I'm not counting that towards the normal experience, so I can't, bump it up any higher just for that being a possibility. Now, the only other thing that is good for is this does enable your coherency toughness regeneration at all times. You don't have to be near your allies or whatever. And this is only useful because Shroud Field allows you to pop the stealth and step away from enemies such that your coherency toughness regen is not blocked. When you're in normal combat with any other build, with any other ultimate, you're going to have enemies that can see you, and so they're going to be trying to get into position around you in your slots, and as long as they are in position around you trying to attack you, you cannot regenerate toughness through your coherency toughness regen. But if you have stealth, you can stealth and then move away from enemies a little bit so they're not standing right next to you anymore, and you'll start to regenerate. And you can improve the regeneration speed by taking Fortitude and Fellowship up here, as well as equipping toughness regeneration curios. And that stuff can actually make the toughness regeneration move at like 6 points, or no, more than that, like 10 points per second, which is, or which is very nice. You can fill up a whole toughness bar in the time that your 5-second stealth goes on, more or less. So a very, very solid way to regenerate your toughness, but it's incredibly niche, and I do not recommend it. I use it on one build that's just sort of more of a meme build, like a super high skill build. It's good for playing in isolation away from your team, but I can't, in all good conscience, recommend it because you could be bringing Benediction, and you could be offering 15% toughness damage reduction to the whole team, and you're a dirty, dirty rat if you don't do that for your team, which I am sometimes, I guess. All right, then we got to go on to the Psyker. The Psyker has, this is called Kinetic Flare. Oh my god, just going all over the place. Psyker, this one with the staff, I think, right? I can't ever remember. Yeah, oh, sorry, Kinetic Presence. Kinetic Presence is for sure like a C tier at best. This offers 7.5% damage against elite enemies for you and allies coherency. Yeah, it does something, but it does 75% of what a single perk on your weapon might do, right? You could take a 10% damage to elites node on your weapon, and that would do more than this. Just not that impressive at all. Moving on to this one, which is very impressive. Let's put this up here in A tier for sure. Seer's Presence. Seer's Presence is 10% CDR on abilities for you and allies in coherency. CDR is pretty much king right now. 10% is 6 seconds off of a 60-second ultimate, or it's 3 seconds off of a 30-second ultimate. You know, this is going to be stacked with everyone's 12% that they probably have on their curios if they're playing optimally, which means you're getting 22% CDR. You also happen to be playing Psyker if you're using this aura, and you're probably taking Psykinetics aura, which confusingly isn't an aura, but gives an aura-like ability, which is 5% additional cooldown on elite or specialist kill. So yeah, if you want to be a cooldown bot, which you probably should if you're playing Psyker, since this aura is so good, you take that, you take this, and you're chunking that cooldown for your team. And then we've got this one, 5% crit chance. It's called Prescience, I think. Yeah, 5% crit chance is fine. Here's the thing. Crit is so widely available in the game now. You know, we've got Zealot, who has 25% crit on a single keystone in the tree. Plus he's got 30% crit off of Scourge and all that shit. The Veteran has Desperado, which is 10% crit, and Reciprocity, which is up to 25% crit, which are nodes that are directly next to each other, and you can take both of them. There's so many ways to get crit. Psyker already has a 7.5% base crit, and then there's like 15 nodes in his fucking tree that give you crit. You know, Scar's Gaze alone gives you 20% crit chance. Once you reach a certain level of crit chance, an extra 5% ends up being very small potatoes. The only class who doesn't have any crit and would ostensibly seem to benefit from this would be Ogryn, right? However, almost no Ogryn weapons benefit from crits in any meaningful way. In fact, here's a really funny detail. Ogryn clubs, the clubs that have finesse damage, normally finesse damage, it multiplies crits and headshots, right? And gives you attack speed. On Ogryn weapons, it just gives you attack speed. There's no multiplier to headshots and stuff on many Ogryn weapons. So this just ends up being useless for Ogryn, even though he can't normally crit, and now he can crit a little bit more. He's not a crit focused beast. So yeah, no one really needs this. It's fine if you want to take it just to boost your crit to that uppermost level, but I can almost guarantee you'll get way more out of having 10% ult cooldown. Then we've got for sure a D tier blessing in Stay Close. This is an Ogryn blessing. It's 25% coherency toughness regen for the whole team. So that's already like 3 points per second, and now it's 3.75. Whoop-de-doo. Like, that is so underwhelming. And then we have Coward Culling, which is 20% damage taken, or 20% damage to enemies who are suppressed. And the Ogryn is pretty good at suppressing enemies. There's a lot of good guns right now that suppress enemies very well, like the Bolter and the Plasma Gun especially. If you shoot an enemy with a Plasma Gun, every enemy within like a quarter mile gets suppressed by that for some reason. The gun is most certainly very balanced. So yeah, Coward Culling is okay. It's 20% damage. It's not bad. The Ogryn is a class that doesn't have very many good auras to start with, so I'll give this B tier just because it's probably his best aura, but it's still pretty middling. And that is everything, folks. Wow. So there's the full tree. I did this over again because my audio was fucked up last night. Hopefully this was faster than my last record. But yeah, I think that's a pretty concise summation of how I feel. Really, especially focusing on this top line, these are abilities that when you're making builds, take them. If you are trying to like have a very optimized build, you're trying to push for new difficulties and stuff, you should be focusing on these builds and these keystones up in the A and the S tier. Look at how many A tier stuff there is in my opinion too, and I think that most people would agree that these are all very, very good. Anyway, y'all, I would very much like it if you would check out and appreciate my members here. There are some awesome people who choose to support me. It is completely optional. You know, they have money to waste on little old me, and I appreciate them to death for that. They have cool little E badges next to their names. Some of them even have the second month E at this point, so that's pretty cool. They get to swag around. But even if you don't want to do that, that is completely fine. Understand me. Just go ahead and subscribe. That would be the most helpful thing you could do. Subscribe, comment. Tell me what's your favorite Keystone, passive, blitz or ability is. Try to make it an interesting one. Don't just tell me, oh yeah, it's scavenger for sure. Like, justify to me why, you know, some of this C and D stuff is actually way more good than I give it a chance for. All right, guys, that's it for me. Mr. E is out of here.